Yeah. Mr Chair, the issues of animal testing addressed by Mojo Mather's SOP are primarily related to Part 2, so I'll return to that theme later on, but in the meantime I wanted to address several issues in Part 1 and to respond to several of the other contributions that have been made. Firstly, Brendan Horan's SOP requiring the Expert Advisory Committee to report annually. That is an SOP that the Green Party will support, but I acknowledge and support the queries made by the Honourable Annette King in relation to that point around who exactly that Expert Advisory Committee ought to be reporting to. And like the Right Honourable Annette King, I invite Brendan Horan to take another call to explain his reasoning and to consider making the adjustment that she suggested. I want to address, as some others have had, the defence mounted by Shane Ardern of Paul Hutchison's decision to rule out of order hundreds of submissions that touched on the issue of animal welfare, and in particular Shane Ardern's outrageous allegation that those people and other members of the Select Committee were in effect colluding to stall the progress of this bill. As Ian Lees-Galloway has been saying, this is a bill that members of the opposition have been calling for years and years. And actually, the stop-start nature of the government's treatment of this issue and this bill is actually the cause of the problem. That's the problem. It's not actually those submitters or the members of the opposition. And in fact, Mr Chair, I think it would be fair to say that I have seldom seen more sincere and genuine submissions to a Select Committee than those that were ruled out of order. And as for the claim that those submissions all related to matters that were outside the scope of this bill, I give this thought experiment. A submitter to the committee might have advocated precisely the wording that is covered in Clause 11A of this bill. They might have done that. And that submission would have been ruled out of order by Paul Hutchison. And that, Mr Chair, gives the lie to the reasoning that's been advanced to support that decision. The ministers, or one of the now many ministers' SOPs on the bill expands Clause 11A to define what a suitable alternative test would be. And Mr Chair, I believe, and I invite the Minister to take a call to explain his reasoning about this, I believe that introduces a new problem, which is that it essentially says a suitable alternative test will be one that the Expert Advisory Committee has publicly notified as being a suitable alternative test. And that's a problem, Mr Chair, because there's absolutely a circular reasoning, but also, as the Select Committee has heard, and as Paul Hutchison has previously advised the House, the interim Expert Advisory Committee already has a predetermined view that animal testing will always be necessary. In other words, we have an interim Expert Advisory Committee at least, and that may become the Expert Advisory Committee, that believes animal testing is always necessary. In other words, it is introducing a de facto requirement for animal testing. And certainly on the basis of what we've already seen, we're never going to see an alternative test publicly notified by that group. I also want to address, Mr Chair, the absolute nonsense that we've heard from a number of speakers so far today, that there is, in some sense, a choice to be made between animal testing and testing on our kids. That, Mr Chair, is a false dichotomy. Nobody is arguing that psychoactive substances that pose more than a low risk ought to make it through this process to get onto the shelves. No one is arguing that. What is at issue is the process by which a substance is found to be low risk. And what Mojo Mather's SOP sets out is a narrower range of testing that will be acceptable to establish that. It will result Mr. Chair, most likely, Mr. Chair,
Kevin Haig.
Mr. Chair, it will most likely result in a smaller range of substances actually making it to the shelves, because by ruling out animal testing, it means that only those substances that actually survive the non-animal testing regime, which, as I'm going to set out in the debate on part 2, are more expensive, and that is why they tend not to be used at present. It actually will rule out those substances that rely on animal tests. So we're presented, Mr. Chair, in the House today with the delicious irony that the government, National Party, and those other parties that are not supporting Mojo Mather's SOP, those parties are in fact advocating for a more liberal regime of establishing the safety and the low risk of psychoactive substances. Mr. Chair, that strikes me as kind of an interesting irony, isn't it? So, Mr. Chair, the other matter that I wanted to address is a matter that the Honourable John Banks raised in his contribution to this debate on Part 1, and in particular the challenge that he made to the Green Party towards the end of his contribution. He said that the Green Party ought to do as he is doing, and that if Mojo Mather's SOP does not become part of this bill, that we ought to oppose the bill. Mr. Chair, we don't do that. We believe that this is a very important bill, one that we've been calling for a long time. It's, on balance, a good bill, but it's not a great bill. And it's a bill that could have been great. Actually, I appeal to the Minister and the Chair, because it could still become great by just a few adjustments made by the government to make it a more logical bill and one that actually meets those highest standards. And we hope that he will take the opportunity to do that. But, Mr. Chair, it's a bill that is necessary. It's a bill that's necessary if we are to achieve the purpose that's set out in this Part 1 of the bill of minimising harm and protecting the users of psychoactive substances. And what I say, actually, finally, in response to the Honourable John Banks, is to acknowledge the challenge that he has made to us, to politely decline that challenge and say that the Green Party will be voting in favour of this bill regardless of whether we can improve it or not, but point out to him that his is a vote that the government relies on for confidence and supply. So that if we are indeed to look at who actually has leverage to actually achieve a great bill, that he might look to his own house. Sir, thank you.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to first of all say that